The cold was unbearable. It had crept into every corner of the abandoned house, curling itself into the empty rooms like a silent predator. Broken windows, forgotten furniture, and a chill that settled deep in the bones of everything it touched. Amidst this desolate silence, the soft whimper of a dog echoed through the walls, a sound so raw it could slice through the stillness of a lifetime. Her body trembled, curled into a tight ball of fur and fear on the cracked, stained carpet. There was no warmth here. No one had been here in months. Her name was Daisy, and she had been left behind. Her fur was matted, dirty from days of wandering the desolate streets. And her eyes, they were empty, searching for something she could no longer remember. How could she have been forgotten so easily? The cruelty of it hung in the air like the dust, thick and choking. She could no longer recall the faces of those who had once called her family. She only remembered the coldness of their departure. It was a small, quiet moment, the sound of a door slamming shut behind her, and then nothing. No goodbye, no explanation. Just the emptiness stretching on and on. Daisy knew that no one was coming. The loneliness had become her only companion, yet in the deepest corners of her weary heart, something refused to die. Hope, a flicker of it, a tiny, stubborn ember that refused to be extinguished. She wasn't ready to give up, not yet. As Daisy slept peacefully, her once thin, frail body now strong and full of life, the soft glow of the moonlight filtered through the window. Her fur, once matted with the remnants of abandonment, now shone with health and vitality. She had transformed, just as her surroundings had, both finding a place of belonging in the quiet embrace of Tom's home. The house, once just a structure, had become a home again. It had been broken, just like Daisy, but it had been mended over time, piece by piece, just like her heart. And now, every corner of that house felt alive with the promise of love and redemption. Tom's life had shifted, too. He no longer walked through his days burdened by the weight of loneliness. The house, the walls, and the air itself seemed to carry the hum of companionship now. Daisy's presence had healed something within him, as if they were two broken pieces that had found their way to one another. They didn't need words. Their bond was spoken through quiet gestures, through shared moments, and through the silent understanding that had grown between them. He watched her from across the room, her body rising and falling gently with each breath. His heart swelled as he thought of how far she had come, how far they both had come, from the cold, abandoned house to this warm sanctuary they had built together. There had been so many moments, so many days where it felt like they might both be lost to the world, forgotten in the chaos of life. But now, with Daisy by his side, everything felt right. He reached down and softly stroked her fur, his fingers moving through the soft strands with an ease that came from years of shared trust. She shifted slightly, and for a brief moment her eyes fluttered open. Daisy's gaze met his, and there was something in her eyes that told him everything he needed to know. She wasn't the broken dog she had once been. She was whole. She was loved. She was home. The silence in the room was filled only with the soft crackling of the fire in the hearth. It was the kind of silence that didn't feel empty, but full of love, of memories made, and of the promise that whatever happened next, they would face it together. Tom's heart tightened as he realized how much he had learned from Daisy. She had shown him the power of resilience, the strength of quiet healing, and the beauty of second chances. In a way, she had saved him just as much as he had saved her. He had once been adrift, unsure of his place in the world, but now he had found it, right beside her. As he stood to leave the room, the moonlight casting long shadows across the floor, Daisy stirred once more, her tail gently thumping against the floor in the rhythm of comfort and contentment. Tom paused at the door, looking back one last time. Her eyes followed him, and in that moment, he knew that nothing would ever separate them. The door closed softly behind him, and as he walked down the hall, he smiled to himself, a quiet laugh escaping his lips. The house was warm. The world was quieter now. And somewhere in the stillness of the night, Daisy was waiting for him, just as she always would be, her heart as open and pure as the love they shared. The years passed like seasons. The house continued to hum with the laughter of a family that had been forged in the quiet, powerful bond of rescue and healing. Daisy had become the heart of that family. There were days when Tom would sit on the porch, the soft hum of summer's filling the air, and Daisy would sit beside him, her head resting against his knee as they both looked out at the world together. They had traveled many miles since those first days of uncertainty. There had been trips to the beach, long walks through wooded trails, and quiet nights spent curled up together, watching the world slip into sleep. But no matter where they went, no matter what they did, Daisy always found her way back to the place that mattered most, the space beside Tom, the one that had always been hers. And as the years stretched on, it was clear that the bond between them wasn't just a rescue story. It was a love story, one that had unfolded in the quiet corners of life, in moments of stillness and tenderness that could never be captured by words alone. One autumn evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Tom and Daisy sat together on the porch, the golden light washing over them. Daisy had grown older, the silver strands of her fur a reminder of the years they had shared. Her eyes, though, still held that spark, that fierce, unwavering hope that had once kept her alive in the cold, abandoned house. And as Tom looked at her, his heart swelling with a love that could never be put into words, he knew. This was what he had been waiting for all his life. Not the perfect house or the perfect life, but this, the quiet, unshakable bond of love and companionship. This was home. He reached down and stroked her fur, his hand moving with the gentle familiarity of someone who had spent a lifetime learning how to love. Daisy lifted her head and met his gaze, her tail thumping softly against the floor in time with his heartbeat. In that moment, nothing else mattered. The world was quiet, the stars were beginning to appear in the sky above, and everything was exactly as it should be. Daisy had come home, and so had he. The years seemed to slip through their fingers like sand, each one soft and fleeting, but every moment etched deeply into their shared history. It wasn't always easy. Life had its challenges. Tom had faced losses of his own, moments where the weight of the world felt too heavy. But through it all, Daisy had been his constant, her presence a balm for his wounds, her quiet companionship a source of strength in moments of doubt. Daisy, for her part, had become a symbol of resilience, not just for Tom, but for everyone who crossed their path. She had once been the dog abandoned in the cold, her body frail and her spirit broken, but now she was a living testament to what love and second chances could do. Her playful bark, her gentle nudge with her nose, the way she would sit beside Tom and tilt her head with that curious look whenever he spoke. These little gestures, these quiet moments, had become the language of their bond. There was something sacred in the simplicity of their lives. They didn't need much, just the comfort of each other's presence, the steady rhythm of their days together. The soft click of Tom's shoes on the porch as he walked outside in the early mornings, the rustle of Daisy's paws following behind him, the way he would reach down to gently scratch her ears before going to bed, and the way she would curl up at the foot of his bed, always close enough to feel his heartbeat. But as with all things, time marches on. The inevitable changes of life slowly crept into their world. Daisy had slowed down in her older years, her steps less sure, her body creaking in protest against the passage of time. The once vibrant sparkle in her eyes had dimmed a little, though it never fully disappeared. Tom could see the toll that age had taken on her, and it pained him more than he cared to admit. One winter evening, a cold gust of wind swept through the house as Tom sat by the fireplace. The flames flickered and danced, casting shadows on the walls that seemed to tell stories of their own. Daisy lay at his feet, her breathing shallow and slow. She had grown tired. Tom stroked her gently, his hand trembling ever so slightly. It wasn't easy to admit, but he knew. He could feel it in the way she rested her head against the floor, in the way her movements had slowed. But Daisy wasn't just a dog. She was his heart, his soul. She had carried him through his darkest days, and he was determined to do the same for her. They had shared so much together. The ups and downs, the quiet joys and the loud sorrows. And now, in this final chapter, Tom would stand by her just as she had done for him. It wasn't long before the decision was made. Tom gently lifted her, her body frail and weak, but still warm in his arms. He walked slowly, carefully, as if he were carrying the most precious thing in the world. Because he was. He settled her gently on the porch, where the soft glow of the setting sun bathed everything in golden light. Daisy, despite her frailty, lifted her head slightly, as if to take in the beauty of the world one last time. She let out a soft sigh, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of all the memories they had shared. Tom knelt beside her, his hand resting on her back, his heart breaking with a love too deep for words. "You've been my everything, Daisy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You've saved me more times than I can count. I hope you know how much you mean to me." Daisy's tail wagged faintly, a small, tired movement, but enough to let him know that she heard him. She closed her eyes, a peaceful calm settled over her. Tom stayed with her, his face buried in her fur, his tears falling silently as the world around them continued its quiet rhythm. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and purple, Tom knew that it was time to let her go. With one final, loving kiss on her head, he whispered, "I'll see you again, my sweet girl." Daisy's breathing grew slower, gentler, until it finally stopped altogether. The world seemed to pause, holding its breath as if the earth itself felt the loss. And in that stillness, Tom knew that Daisy had found peace. She had come full circle. From the cold, abandoned house to this warm, loving home, she had lived a life full of love, hope, and second chances. Tom stayed beside her for a while longer, his heart heavy but full of gratitude. Daisy had shown him that love wasn't just about the moments of happiness, but about the quiet moments of commitment, the times when life was hard but you still chose to stay. She had been his constant, his guide, and now she was free. As he stood, gazing at the stars that were beginning to twinkle in the night sky, Tom felt a sense of calm. Daisy had gone, but she would never truly be gone. She would live on in every moment they had shared, in every lesson she had taught him. Her spirit would remain in the warmth of the home they had built together, in the love that would never fade. And as the wind whispered through the trees, Tom smiled softly, his heart at peace. He knew that wherever she was, Daisy was still watching over him. Always. The house was quiet now, the soft hum of life continuing on in the distance. But for Tom, it was never truly quiet. Daisy's memory lingered in every corner, in every room they had shared, in every piece of furniture they had touched together. And as he sat by the window, watching the moon rise high above the earth, he knew that love, like the stars, never truly fades. It simply changes form, becoming something new, something eternal. And in his heart, he would always carry her with him. The days that followed felt different, quieter. The house, though still filled with memories, seemed to echo with the absence of Daisy's gentle presence. Tom moved through his routine in a daze, his steps slower, as if the weight of grief had settled into his bones. The once vibrant energy in the house had dulled. He found himself waking up in the mornings, half expecting to hear the familiar sound of her paws padding softly against the wooden floors, the gentle thump of her tail against the walls when she wagged it with excitement. The mornings were the hardest. He would sit in the kitchen, sipping his coffee, and stare at the empty spot by the door where Daisy had once waited patiently every day. It was a place now devoid of purpose, a space that had once been full of life, full of unconditional love. But life, as it always does, continued. The world outside the house moved forward, indifferent to the deep ache inside it. The seasons shifted. Winter thawed into spring, and the flowers bloomed, brightening the yard where Daisy had once run so freely. Yet every step Tom took through his days now carried the weight of her absence. It wasn't easy. Healing rarely was. Tom found himself taking longer walks now, looking for solace in the quiet solitude of nature. The trees that once swayed gently in the breeze felt like old friends, their branches reaching high into the sky as if offering him strength. He would sit by the creek that ran through the woods behind his house, listening to the sound of the water, the soft rustle of leaves in the wind as the world around him came alive. It was in these moments that he began to feel her presence again. Not in the tangible sense, not in the weight of her body beside him, but in the quiet moments of reflection, in the way he felt the earth beneath his feet, the same earth that had held Daisy in her final moments. It was as if her spirit had woven itself into the very fabric of his life, grounding him in a way he could never have imagined before. One afternoon, as he sat by the creek, the wind picking up and carrying the scent of pine and fresh earth, Tom felt the familiar tug of something deep within his chest. It wasn't the sharp pain of loss anymore, not the rawness that had gripped him after Daisy's passing. It was something else. It was a sense of peace, a whisper of her, the love she had given him, the lessons she had taught him, and the strength she had passed on. He closed his eyes, taking in a deep breath, and for the first time since she had gone, he smiled. It was then that he realized Daisy had given him more than just her companionship. She had shown him the power of resilience, the beauty of vulnerability, and the importance of embracing love in all its forms. She had come into his life when he was at his lowest and had, without ever speaking a word, helped him heal. Now, even though she was no longer physically by his side, the love they had shared continued to guide him. Tom's life wasn't defined by her absence, but by the way she had filled it with meaning. He knew now that the heartache of losing her was not a sign of weakness, but a testament to the depth of their bond. He wasn't broken by the pain, he was made stronger by it, and in the quiet moments, like the one he sat in now, he felt that strength. The world around him was constantly changing, but he knew that the love he had for Daisy would never change. It was constant, eternal, like the stars that shone so brightly in the night sky. Even though she was no longer there, he could feel her. In the soft winds, the rustling of the leaves, the way the sunlight filtered through the trees, just as it had when she had run to the yard, carefree and full of joy. Tom stood up, brushing the dirt from his pants, and looked around one last time at the peaceful creek. It was time to go back, to face the world once again, but this time with a heart full of gratitude. Daisy had taught him how to live fully, how to love without hesitation, and how to embrace the fleeting moments of life with everything he had. The house awaited him, still empty in its quiet way, but no longer holding the sharp ache of loss. It was filled with memories, precious memories that he would carry with him for as long as he lived. As he walked back home, his steps felt lighter, his heart fuller. He knew that, though Daisy had passed from this world, she would never truly be gone. She was woven into the fabric of his life, a part of him forever. And as long as he lived, her spirit would always be there, beside him, watching, loving, guiding. The house, the creek, the trees, the very air around him all whispered the same message: love never truly fades. It just changes, it transforms, and it lives on forever. Tom smiled again, this time with a deep, peaceful knowing. "Thank you, Daisy," he whispered to the wind, knowing she could hear him. "Thank you for everything." And with that, he walked home, where he knew he would always be surrounded by the love they had shared, a love that had filled the space of a lifetime, and would continue to fill it for all the days to come. The weeks that followed were quieter still, but Tom had found a way to navigate through the silence. He began to understand that grief, like the seasons, would ebb and flow. Some days he felt her presence so deeply that it almost seemed like she was still beside him, her warm body curled at his feet, her gentle breaths a reminder of the love they had shared. On other days, the absence was overwhelming, like a weight pressing down on his chest. But in those moments, he remembered the lessons she had left him with. Daisy had shown him the power of being present, the beauty in the quiet moments of life. She had taught him to appreciate the small, fleeting things: the sound of the rain tapping against the window, the soft glow of the evening sun filtering through the trees, the way the world seemed to pause for a moment just before dusk settled in. It was in those quiet, sacred spaces that Tom found peace. He had started to pick up pieces of his old routine: walks through the woods, visits to the creek, time spent in the garden, planting flowers in the spring sun. And as he worked in the yard, the scent of blooming flowers filled the air, each one a reminder of Daisy's joy for life, her love for the outdoors, the way she would run through the garden, her tail wagging, chasing after a butterfly, or simply enjoying the wind in her fur. There were moments when Tom would pause, leaning on his shovel or resting against the fence, lost in thought. He would look around the yard, and for a split second, it was as though Daisy was there with him, her playful energy filling the space. In those moments, he could almost hear the soft patter of her paws, see her ears perk up with excitement. It was a bittersweet feeling, but it made him smile, because it reminded him that she hadn't truly left. She had become a part of everything he touched, everything he experienced. One day, as Tom worked in the garden, a family with young children came walking by. The children were laughing and running ahead, chasing each other down the path. Tom watched them for a moment, their energy infectious. He smiled softly to himself, remembering when Daisy was the one running through the grass, chasing after the wind with unbridled joy. The sight brought a wave of emotion over him, but it wasn't the deep, raw pain he had once felt. Instead, it was a quiet sadness mixed with a sense of gratitude. He realized then that he could still carry Daisy's memory with him, honor the love they had shared, and yet allow himself to keep moving forward. Her spirit was a part of him, woven into every step he took, every decision he made. And as the children ran past, Tom made a silent promise to Daisy, to himself, that he would live in a way that honored her memory. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to emerge, Tom sat on the porch with a cup of tea in his hands. He watched the sky slowly darken, the stars twinkling softly overhead. It was on nights like this that he missed Daisy the most. She would always sit beside him, her head resting on his knee, her warmth grounding him in the stillness of the night. But even in her absence, Tom knew she had left him with more than just memories. She had given him a deeper understanding of life, of love, of loss, of the strength that lies in moving forward, even when it feels impossible. She had shown him how to live with an open heart, to embrace the beauty of the world and all the little joys it held, even when it seemed broken. As the night grew colder, Tom stood and walked to the edge of the porch, gazing out at the darkened yard. He could almost see her there, her eyes shining in the moonlight, her body moving gracefully through the shadows. The breeze carried a faint, familiar scent, the earthy smell of grass, of trees, of life. And in that moment, it felt as though Daisy was still there, still running through the yard, still chasing after the wind, her spirit as alive as ever. He closed his eyes, a soft smile crossing his face. "I will never forget you, Daisy," he whispered into the night. "You're always with me." And in the stillness of the evening, as the world settled into its quiet rhythm, Tom felt the warmth of her love surrounding him once again. It wasn't gone. It had simply transformed, becoming a part of the world around him, a part of his own heart. The moon rose higher in the sky, and for the first time in months, Tom felt truly at peace. The pain, though still there, no longer defined him. Daisy's love had carried him through, and now it was time to carry that love forward into the future, one step at a time, with the same grace, the same resilience that she had shown him. As he turned head back inside, he looked once more at the stars. "Thank you," he whispered to the night, knowing that wherever Daisy was, she was watching over him, her love eternal, her spirit free. And with that, he stepped inside, the door closing softly behind him, but the warmth of her memory still filling the house, still filling his heart. Forever. The days continued to pass, each one weaving into the next, but Tom had found a quiet peace in the rhythm of life. The sorrow, though it never fully left, had become something different, something bearable. He still felt the weight of her absence, but it was no longer a constant ache. Instead, it was a gentle, enduring presence, like the soft hum of a distant memory, comforting in its familiarity. Spring had come, bringing with it new life. The flowers bloomed in vibrant colors, and the trees filled with new buds, their branches heavy with promise. Tom had been working in the garden more than ever, finding solace in the earth. With each seed he planted, each row of vegetables he sowed, he felt Daisy's spirit beside him, urging him on, reminding him that life had to keep moving forward. One afternoon, as he was kneeling beside a patch of freshly turned soil, his hand brushing the dirt with care, he heard a soft whine from behind him. Startled, he looked over his shoulder, half expecting to see Daisy's familiar, playful face, as if she had returned from one of her many runs in the yard. But instead, his gaze met the eyes of a dog he hadn't seen before. A small, scruffy creature standing by the garden gate, looking at him with curiosity and a hint of uncertainty. The dog was thin, its fur matted in places, its ribs clearly visible beneath the rough coat. It stood there for a moment hesitant, watching Tom with a mixture of fear and hope. And in that instant, Tom knew. His heart clenched as he recognized the familiar look in the dog's eyes. The same look Daisy had had when he first found her, abandoned and lost. The dog took a tentative step forward, then another, its eyes never leaving Tom's. It was as if it, too, was searching for something. For love, for safety, for a home. Without a second thought, Tom stood up slowly, his heart thumping in his chest. He knelt down, extending a hand toward the dog, just as he had done for Daisy all those years ago. "It's okay," he murmured softly, his voice gentle. "You're safe now." The dog approached slowly, its movements cautious but steady, and when it finally reached him, it nuzzled his hand, a soft, hesitant touch. Tom's heart melted. He knew that this was another moment of connection, another moment where his life had been irrevocably altered by the presence of a dog in need. The dog sniffed his hand and then, as if reassured, sat down beside him, its eyes bright with a glimmer of trust. Tom couldn't help but smile, the feeling of familiarity washing over him, as if Daisy had sent this new soul to him, as if, in some way, her love had guided him to this moment. Over the next few days, Tom took the dog in. He named it Buddy, simple, straightforward, yet filled with meaning. Buddy settled into the house easily, just as Daisy had. There were moments when Tom would catch himself looking at the dog, thinking he saw glimpses of Daisy in the way Buddy would curl up on the rug, or in the way he would sit by the door, waiting for Tom to come home. It was as though Daisy had sent him, a reminder that love doesn't end with loss. It only transforms. Buddy, too, had been through his own hardships. He was still timid in some ways, still hesitant to trust fully. But with each passing day, his confidence grew, and so did his bond with Tom. They would go on long walks together, Buddy's tail wagging happily as they strolled through the neighborhood. There were no promises, no guarantees, but there was love, the kind that comes from giving and receiving, from understanding that healing doesn't happen overnight. One evening, after a long walk through the woods, Tom and Buddy sat on the porch together, just as he had once done with Daisy. The sun had just set, leaving behind a soft glow in the sky. The air was cool, but the warmth from the day's sun lingered in the earth, in the breeze. Buddy lay at Tom's feet, his eyes half closed in contentment. Tom looked up at the stars, feeling a familiar sense of peace. Daisy was still with him, in the quiet moments, in the love he had learned to give and receive. She had taught him that love doesn't always come in the form we expect. Sometimes it comes as a second chance, in the form of a new companion, a new beginning. "Thank you, Daisy," he whispered to the night, his voice soft, full of gratitude. "I'll never forget you." As the stars shimmered above, he felt a warmth settle over him, like a gentle embrace from the past. Daisy had given him the gift of love, and now, with Buddy by his side, he had the chance to give it again. In the quiet of the evening, in the stillness of the world around him, Tom knew that this was how life worked. It gave you what you needed, in its own time, in its own way. The love he had shared with Daisy had never truly gone. It had simply transformed, finding new paths, new places to grow, just like the garden he tended to every day. He didn't need to hold on to the past because it was still with him, in every act of kindness, in every moment of compassion. It had shaped him, just as it had shaped the love he now shared with Buddy. As he stood to go inside, Buddy followed him closely, his paws soft on the wooden floor. Together, they entered the house, a home filled with memories, with love, and with the promise of a future that, though uncertain, was rich with possibility. The door clicked shut softly behind them. The house, once cold and empty, now felt full of love, full of life, full of everything Daisy had left behind. And as Tom settled into his chair by the fire, Buddy curled up at his feet, the soft crackle of the flames filling the air. He knew one thing for certain: no matter how much time passed, the love Daisy had given him would never fade. It would only continue to grow, and in that love there was peace. Tom smiled, his heart finally at rest. The journey of grief had been long, but it had led him here. To this moment, to this home, with Buddy by his side. And somewhere, just beyond the stars, he knew Daisy was watching over them, her love still guiding him forever. The seasons continued to shift, each one bringing its own set of changes and reminders. Winter returned with its biting cold, but the house remained warm, filled with the gentle hum of life. Tom and Buddy, though they had only been together for a short time, had developed a bond that was unmistakable. It wasn't the same as what Tom had shared with Daisy. It didn't need to be. But it was deep, pure, and rooted in the same principles of trust, love, and the slow healing that life demanded. There were days when Tom still missed Daisy so much it took his breath away. The mornings when the house was too quiet, when Buddy's eager tail wagging didn't quite fill the silence the way Daisy's gentle presence once had. There were moments when Tom found himself sitting at the kitchen table, staring out the window, waiting for the familiar sound of paws padding across the floor, waiting for the brush of fur against his leg as Daisy would nudge him for attention. But Buddy, in his own way, had started to fill that space. He didn't replace Daisy. He never could. But he was a reminder that life had a way of surprising you, of giving you what you needed, even when you weren't looking for it. Where Daisy had been calm and regal, Buddy was exuberant, his energy a force of nature, and Tom often found himself laughing in spite of himself at Buddy's goofy antics. They would play together in the yard, Buddy leaping through the snow with abandon, his joy contagious. Tom would throw a ball, and Buddy would bound after it with the same pure enthusiasm that had once been Daisy's. And yet, in those quiet moments at the end of the day, when the world had slowed and the air had grown still, Tom would sit and reflect, remembering Daisy with a kind of reverence that came from knowing how much she had shaped him. He hadn't expected to find another dog, another soul to love. But now that he saw how much room there still was in his heart to give, how much more he had to offer. One evening, as winter began to give way to early spring, Tom sat on the porch, Buddy beside him, his head resting on Tom's knee. The last traces of sunset lit the sky in soft orange and pink hues, and the breeze carried the faint scent of earth and growth, a promise that life would continue to move forward. Tom felt a deep sense of gratitude, one that he hadn't truly felt before, not just for the love he had given and received, but for the way life had unfolded. Daisy had given him the strength to open his heart again, to allow another dog to take her place. But more than that, Daisy had shown him how precious love was, how quickly time slipped through your fingers, and how vital it was to appreciate every moment. "Thank you," he whispered softly, his fingers gently brushing through Buddy's fur. He wasn't sure if he was thanking Daisy, or the universe, or himself for being brave enough to open his heart again. But in that moment, he felt whole, not because he was without pain, but because he had learned to live with it, to embrace it, to move forward with love. Buddy lifted his head and looked up at him, sensing the weight of the moment. Tom smiled, his eyes misting over. It was a small, quiet smile, but it was full of everything he had learned, everything he had been given. The next few months passed with a sense of newness. Not a fresh start, but a continuation of everything that had come before. Tom found himself allowing new experiences into his life, adventures he had put off for so long, and each one felt like a small victory. He had become a different person, shaped by the love of a dog who had come into his life when he least expected it. But that love had healed him, slowly but surely, and it was that healing that allowed him to move forward. The house felt full again, full of memories, of hope, of life. When Tom looked around, he no longer felt the emptiness that had once threatened to swallow him whole. He could see Daisy in the wind rustling through the trees, in the flowers that bloomed in the garden, in the quiet moments when everything was still. And he could see Buddy, too, in the way he bounded through the yard, his eyes full of life and joy. On the anniversary of Daisy's passing, Tom took Buddy to the creek where he had once sat with Daisy. It was an emotional day for him, one that still carried the weight of loss. But it was also a day of celebration. He had spent so many years grieving, so many months struggling to understand how to live without her. And now, as he sat by the water with Buddy by his side, he realized that he had finally found peace. Daisy would always be a part of him. Her love would never leave. But he had allowed himself to grow, to find new joys, new loves, new reasons to be grateful for the life he had. Buddy lay at his feet, his head resting on Tom's lap. As they both looked out at the flowing water, the sounds of the creek soothing and steady. It was a new chapter, one that had been born from the lessons of the past, but one that held its own promise. Tom had found his way back to life, not because the pain of loss had disappeared, but because he had allowed love to lead him forward. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the familiar scent of the earth of home. Tom knew that the journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more grief, and more moments of joy. But he also knew that he was no longer alone. He had Buddy, and he had the love of a dog who had once shown him the meaning of second chances. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Tom placed a hand on Buddy's head, his heart full. "Thank you," he whispered again. And though he wasn't sure if it was to Daisy, to Buddy, or to the universe itself, he knew one thing for certain: love, in all its forms, would always guide him home. As the evening settled into a quiet night, Tom and Buddy remained on the porch, bathed in the soft light of the stars. The air was cool but not cold, carrying with it the promise of change. A reminder that life, in its endless cycle, always moves forward. In the stillness, Tom could feel weight of the journey behind him, but also the lightness of the path ahead. He looked down at Buddy, his loyal companion, now resting contentedly beside him. The dog's eyes, full of trust and unspoken gratitude, met his, and for a moment, everything felt right. Everything felt whole. Tom knew that life was a series of moments, some fleeting, some heavy, but all precious. His heart had known loss, but it had also known love, deep and unconditional. And in this moment, with Buddy by his side, he understood that love never truly ends. It transforms, it evolves, and it finds new ways to make itself known. For the first time in a long while, Tom felt no longing, no emptiness. There was only peace, the kind of peace that comes when you allow yourself to be fully present, to embrace both the beauty and the pain that life offers. Because in the end, it's all part of the same journey. The night stretched on, the soft rustling of the leaves in the trees, and the distant sound of the creek, the only sounds around them. Tom stood up slowly, gently lifting Buddy with him as he headed inside. He glanced one last time at the quiet world outside, feeling the weight of everything that had come before, and the warmth of everything that lay ahead. "Good night, Daisy," he whispered into the night, a soft smile playing on his lips. And with that, he closed the door behind him, knowing that the love they had shared would always be with him, in every step he took, in every heart he touched. The door clicked softly, and the house, once empty, now felt completely full of love, full of memories, full of life, and for Tom that was enough.